Fans, we're back. We were talking in the last segment. On the national level, wrestling is just, to me, kind of in the toilet right now.
It's not enjoyable to watch.
I'm not sure what they can do to even save it at this point.
They literally need their
talents out there.
Yeah, they literally need their next, and I'm not necessarily meaning in character-wise, their next Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin. I mean,
they're trying to make John Cena that, and they have for 8 years or so, and it's not working.
Maybe even a Sting. They could use a Sting.
they
You
could.
know, when it's not working, you have to back off of it at some point. You know, and it's. I saw King Kong Bundy, of all people, talking about this. You know, King Kong Bundy, if you actually watch anything from him, King Kong Bundy is very smart, very well spoken, and would make a great announcer.
Yes.
And I'm not sure why that they know what he hires him for that, because he's very well spoken and very funny and quick. But he was saying that characters stay the same too long in wrestling now. And he mentioned Triple H. He said Triple H has been the same character now for almost 15 years.
Right.
He said, you know, Kane has been the same Kane for the last 12 or 15 years.
I mean, even
Everybody, he said the people just stay the same.
even when they switch from good to bad, good guy, bad
It's still
guy,
the same.
they're the same. They're the same.
I mean,
Triple H is Triple H, whether he's a
he
good
said
guy or a bad guy.
He
He's
said
the
they
same.
don't change anything up. And he mentioned also the fact that every Monday night you have a card full of pay-per-view level kind of matches. But you don't really have the belts on the line or anything like that. What made wrestling really popular in the 80s and 90s, they went completely away from. And that doesn't make sense.
I'll use an example. That Ric Flair match I was talking about earlier. This was back when there were territories all over the country.
Right.
We had Continental, which was basically Tennessee and actually East Tennessee and Alabama, because Middle and West Tennessee was part of Mid-South, which was, Jerry Lawler's
Right.
area. But Continental was part of the National Wrestling Alliance. Ric Flair was the NWA champion. About 3-4 times a year, he came and put the belt on the line, usually against the Bullet, not Bob Armstrong, but Bullet. They're different people.
He may have had a match or two against the Bullet, though.
Also, there was one time he took on a dear friend of mine, Wendell Cooley. I'll tell a story about him on a future episode. But, I mean, you really believed that there was a good chance that the Bullet or Bob Armstrong, whichever one was wrestling him that night, was going to walk away with the NWA title. There was one night, I remember specifically, the Bullet having to use the figure 4 as his finisher. He had Flair in the figure 4. The bell rings. Crowd goes wild. The bell rang because it was a 60-minute time limit draw. And my attention was focused the whole match, all about 50 minutes, because they wind up shaving a little bit off. Never got bored. You don't see that today.
Right. You can't keep a match going for 10 or 15 minutes without people being bored now.
It's really sad. I mean, even on the local level, and there is some good local wrestling out there. I'll talk about TXW in a few minutes. If you're a wrestling fan in East Tennessee, TXW is the place to go. But, I mean, literally, you could go to cards. There'd be a 60-minute match as the main event. Almost no question. And you don't see a lot of the good feud-ending specialty matches anymore.
No.
You see an occasional cage match. You never see a barbed wire match or a bull rope
Now
match.
everything is geared toward a specific pay-per-view, how it's going to be.
Right.
And that's they're going to be a Hell in the Cell, you're going to have a cage match. You're going to have
Elimination Chamber.
this match at this pay-per-view. And that's all that the Monday night shows are now, and the Friday night shows are just it's
Gearing
a
up the
constant
pay-per-view.
segue. It's trying to sell you the pay-per-view.
And Thursday night, Impact on Thursday night's basically the same way. You get a little bit more wrestling on Impact.
I mean, no belts are ever on the line on outside of pay-per-views anymore.
And, if you keep seeing non-title matches, it makes the title match seem less
Honestly,
important.
it was exceptionally rare for there to be a non-title match. Unless it was, say, Ric Flair against
George South.
yeah, just some jobber guy that's going to come in there and fill a spot for 30 30-minute Saturday morning show. You know, that was your non-title match, maybe.
And you don't have squash matches. You don't have what used to be WCW Saturday Night, where you'd have just about all the big stars come out and take on your George South, your Bill and Randy Mulligan, your Italian Stallion.
I mean, that stopped existing. You know, when they raised the stakes in the 90s with the greatest stars that wrestling's ever saw. When
2 generations of them.
you
Right.
just, you know, and unfortunately they no longer have the stars to pull that kind of thing off.
No, like I said, TNA. I mean, they've got Hogan, and they got Flair, and they've got some others.
Sting is still there.
Now Sting actually, from what I understand, Sting has picked his game back up.
Well, I think a lot of the problem with some of the bigger names is the fact that, as we mentioned in the last segment, a lot of them are semi-retired. They show up, basically, it's almost like they show up when they want to, do what they want to, and they go home.
And I got to say this, I never thought in my life I would say this, and it actually hurts me inside to say it. Ric Flair never needs to get in the ring again. It breaks my heart to see him try to perform now.
He's getting close to 70 now.
He's literally still a better talker than pretty much anybody out there. And to be his age, he can still do some stuff. He's like, it's a hard business to give up.
Yeah.
But I don't want to see him die in the ring, and that's what it's coming down to.
I'm afraid you're right. As I said, it is hard to walk away from, but he needs to at least give up the in-ring action.
Right.
Be a commentator. Be
a manager.
Be a manager.
Can you imagine a better manager for your guys that can't talk?
Think about it. Resurrect the Four Horsemen with Ric Flair being the talking manager.
See, he tried to do that in TNA with a group called Fortune, and of course this is Vince Russo writing. He immediately turned on him.
Well, they did a similar thing in WWE
With Resurrection.
Right.
No, I'm sorry, Evolution.
Evolution. And that was a good gimmick. That was probably one of the best gimmicks they've had since Monday Night Wars. The problem is, it imploded on itself because they decided to write that they all hate each other.
Yeah. Resurrection was a group I was in Facebook wrestling, in case anybody's wondering.
Now the writing is so down now, and say the unchanging characters, like say, heels don't act any different than faces now.
No.
It's just one big shade of gray. There's no
Triple
black
H
and white.
is Triple H, no matter whether he's a bad guy or a good guy.
The pseudo heel was a revolution that was just impacted wrestling greatly in the mid '90s.
That's the NWO.
Well, I mean,
it was Steve Austin. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Kevin Nash was the funny heel that everybody loved what he did, even though he was the bad guy. And then Steve Austin was the anti-hero. But since he was beating up his boss, and let's be honest, except for me, everybody dreams of beating up their boss. I don't want to beat up Kelly Joe. But, when I worked at the park, I wanted to pile drive Kim from time to time.
Oh, yeah, so the NWO was so popular that even though they were playing the roles of heels, they were over with the fans regardless.
And it was entertaining. Now, they want to make everyone that way. And that doesn't work. You don't have...
In fact, Kevin Nash, tremendous microphone talent, pulls it off well.
Yes.
Steve Austin, tremendous all-around talent, pulls it off better than anybody.
Yeah, The Rock pulled it off wonderfully.
Right.
The Rock did a good job.
The Rock would be Ric Flair.
The best guy on the microphone of the WWE now is Santana.
He is. He really is.
Brilliant on a microphone.
I actually would love to see him get a bigger push.
I would like to see him have a show similar to Piper's Pit or something like that.
And I'll tell you a guy, who's still really good on the mic, and this is crazy to me. He's actually leaving pro wrestling to go back to try out for the Olympics. Is Kurt Angle.
Right. Kurt Angle he's a superior athlete to all current wrestlers in either branch, and he took to pro wrestling better than any other from. I mean, MMA. I mean, all
pretty much anybody that's come from another area.
Right.
Pro football, MMA, amateur wrestling. God help us all, the NBA.
Right.
That was a good idea.
We've had they've even tried actors because a lot of wrestlers, if they work out well. I mean, look at The Rock and Hulk Hogan. They did well translating to the big screen. Not all big screen players can go over to wrestling.
No,
not at all.
They really shouldn't.
Now, on the local scene, I mentioned them earlier, TXW Wrestling. They've got a show coming up this weekend. If you're on Facebook, look up TXW Wrestling if you're a wrestling fan. They're doing a show, and the band Chromalia is playing. Now, TXW, a lot of the guys that we did SECW with, that's them.
Right.
Billy Marshall and Money Man Preston Tipton. It's kind of their baby. It is the best, in my opinion, pro wrestling in this area. I mean, and I like Danny Ray's UWA too, and I've not seen a lot of his stuff, but you can watch TXW stuff on YouTube. There's some really great talent there. I've been to some of their shows. In fact, in between segments, I was looking at some stuff I did with them in Lake City. If you ever are in Knoxville or just in need of a wrestling fix, and I'm going to try to get old Money Man Preston Tipton to send me some video footage for us to watch on the show when we move over to our new high-tech facility with our big projector and all that. TXW is good, local, southern wrestling. There are good guys and bad guys. You know who you want to cheer for. You know who the villains are. Yeah. And I know you guys have been to several local shows. So we did shows together. You came to some of the stuff Continental did. You went to some of the stuff I did with Gym City up in Jellicoe. There's some fun to be had at these shows.
Oh yeah, I mean it's entertaining to watch the crowd at a lot of the shows.
I mean, you watched a crazed woman chase me around a gym one night.
Every time Pat came out, she chased him with her shoe.
I mean, this woman is cuckoo. I mean,
I spotted her when we came in. I said, "We're going to have trouble out of this one." Sure enough,
out I walked, and it all started. Of course, she's been linked romantically to the Wild Samoan, who actually is one of my favorite local wrestlers. Great guy. But his girlfriend's crazy.
She hates Patrick.
I can't even understand why I'm such a lovable character. I just want to come out, eat, and cheat. That's all I want to do in wrestling.
You probably should. It's for the best.
I mean, okay, I like to have a piece of pizza during my match.
And maybe you can get Sean Jesse to come down and be your opposite number. Or just feed you pizza.
Man.
I'd like to have some footage of the perfect Peebly versus Coach Sean Jesse in Carroll Elementary.
It actually is probably one of the best matches I've ever done. Even though Sean had to cheat to beat me.
That was high.
Sean often
the problem is, you guys barred me from ringside. You were able to do that.
I'm a villain that way. Fans, we're out of time for this week's Wrestletalk, not Sports Chat. That's our other show that you should also watch. We'll be back next week talking more about how much we hate national wrestling.